Hello, my grots and gits, and welcome back to yet another episode of Happy Crumping Wargaming. I am thrilled to share this episode with you today. This is probably going to be one of the most impactful episodes in immediately leveling up your skill in the game of Warhammer 40,000. Basically any YouTube video you've probably ever watched. So one of the things that I have noticed at a lot of my tournaments that I've gone to, a lot of the clients that I'm coaching now, is that one of the greatest distinguishers between a good player and a holy crap, this is a good player, is going to be mastery of combat movement in the fight phase. And it's something that really is not understood very well. As a matter of fact, I'd be willing to bet that if you're watching this video, chances are high you are a much better player than the average player, but you're probably making some mistakes here that I think we are going to really address very solidly today, and we're going to dramatically improve your play. So settle in for the next 20-25 minutes and get ready to seriously upgrade your play style. So we're talking about core rules mastery. One thing that people just get wrong is they don't understand how to avoid certain awful scenarios because they don't have a full grasp of the core rules. So we're going to be talking about the fight phase specifically today. And the fight phase is going to be broken down into 3 steps. The first thing that you do when you fight is you pile in. The second thing you do is you make your attacks. And then the third thing you do is you make your consolidate. So we're going to break each one of these down, and I'm going to be using TTS to demonstrate how you can utilize all these individual steps of the fight phase to really maximize your impact. So this is something that really confuses people a lot. Activation and fights first. And I'm going to have to talk about the fights first ability a little bit in this video, even though it's not really a fights first video, just to really help you all grasp the concept of this piling in, then fighting, then consolidating concept. All right. So in the fight phase, during the fight phase, okay, players will alternate activations starting with the non-active player. What does this mean? Well, you'll have some units that have the fights first ability, and then everyone who doesn't have the fights first ability will fight normally. So there's 2 categories of fighting, okay? Fights first and fighting normally. In both categories, the non-active player starts. So if it's my fight phase, I just charged with a unit, and I charged one of your units that actually has the fight first ability, both of our units will have a fight first ability, because when you charge, you get the fights first ability for that phase. So let's say I am charging with my knobs, and I'm charging into a unit of Khorne Berserkers led by a Master of Executions. So since both of us have the fights first ability, we will all take turns alternating activations, starting with the non-active player, which would be you. So you, who being my opponent, the person I charge, would actually get to fight first in that scenario, and then I will activate my fights first opponents, and so on and so forth, until there are no more fights first units. After all units with the fights first abilities, so units that charged or units that have the fights first ability in their data sheets fight, you go on to all other combats. These will be units that are basically in remaining combats, okay? And once again, we will start with the non-active player before we take turns alternating. This is really important to understand. All right, cool. Let's go on to the next thing. Fighting units you did not charge. Now, this is a concept that works that's really important to grasp in 10th edition. So a lot of people still are making this mistake. They have holdovers in their thoughts about 9th edition. So in 9th edition, you could not fight a unit unless you declared a charge against them in the same turn. However, in 10th edition, that is not the case. So allow me to kind of go to the TTS screen here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of demonstrate just how this works, just so you guys can get a little bit of a concept. So we'll swap on over. All right, so here we are. We are on the TTS screen. And I'm just going to grab 2 units here. So I'm going to say I have some infiltrators, and they're going to be hanging out right here, like this. We'll go on this side just to make it easy. Infiltrators right here. And then I'm going to have some knobs, because everybody loves knobs. And then I'm going to have some, give me some scouts. Okay. So say my knobs really want to charge these scouts. But the scouts are pretty far away. So it would be a 11-inch charge to declare the scouts as the charge target. However, I could charge these infiltrators, and it's only a 6-inch charge. What I can do in 10th edition is I can declare just the infiltrators as the target of my charge. And let's say I roll a 9 Or heck, let's just say I roll a 10 for my charge. So what I get to do is I get to move every single model. And now they will have to base the models that they charged. Or if they can base, they will have to base. So I get a 10-inch movement. So see how this guy can't really make it in base-to-base contact with the 10? That means he's going to have to come this side. So we'll go 8.7, we'll go 1.3, and we'll tag him right there. And then this guy will have to tag right there. So now, no longer can I get any knobs base-to-base within these models. So all I have to do to complete this charge now is I have to end my movement closer to the models, to the unit that I charged. So my knobs can actually charge like this. Since I rolled a 10, they can charge all the way up here. And then they can charge like this, because they're still ending their movement closer to the infiltrators, because the infiltrators with Trog. The only restriction here is I have to make sure that I am outside of an inch of any enemy unit that I did not declare a charge into. Put you right there, and then I can put you right there. So basically, essentially what's going to happen is once I start my pile-in, now I have successfully completed my charge here. So once I start my pile-in is a 3-inch move that's going to actually allow me to pile in towards the closest enemy model, effectively allowing me to fight this unit even though I did not declare a charge against them. So now I'll get to kill both units, even though this unit was way too far away to rationally declare a charge against. It's very, very powerful that you understand this in 10th edition. So that's how that works. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, and we're going to keep on going so that we can learn a bunch and we can dominate the game of Warhammer and 40,000. And 40,000. Weird. I just said that in a weird way. Sorry. Okay. So let's talk about those pile-ins now. So we just talked about the charging, how you can charge units that you didn't, or you can fight units that you didn't necessarily charge as long as you can pile in. So actually, let's discuss how pile in works. And I'm going to go back to the same example. I'm going to use that just to really teach you guys how to maximize this. So in order to pile in, you must be within engagement range of an enemy unit, or you must have completed a charge and you are capable of ending a pile-in within engagement range of an enemy unit. The pile-in itself is a 3-inch movement that has to go towards the closest enemy model. This is on a model per model basis, and you have to base so long as you can maintain coherency. That is a lot of words. It's not that confusing, so I'm going to actually just show you exactly the way it works here, okay? So let me go back to TTS for a moment here. Okay, so for example, I completed this charge, right? I'm just going to move these guys backwards a little bit, and we'll just use this more or less the same example here, okay? So I completed this charge. My knobs charged into the infiltrators, and I have to make sure that I end my charge outside of an inch of the enemy models that I did not declare the charge. Now, however, we are in the pile-in phase. So in the pile-in step, since I charged, I get to do a pile-in, and I get to go towards the closest enemy model. So this guy is 2.5 inches away from this knob, and the infiltrator is 2.6. So I get to go towards the closest enemy model. And with a 3-inch movement, I will actually get to base both of these models. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this guy. He's going to go 3 inches, and he's going to base the enemy models. Then this guy, he goes 3.4, 4.1. So he's going to have to actually end up moving closer to the infiltrators. And with his 3-inch movement, he's going to be right here. Now this dude, 3.9, 2.4. So he's going to get to actually base the infiltrators here. Boom. And then lastly, I have one more model. And with a 3-inch movement, he will get base to base with my model that is already base to base. Now I'm in unit coherency because every model is within 2 inches of 2 of my models. Maybe this guy's a little out. Sorry. Oh no, he's good because he's like within 2 inches of him, 2 inches of him. So now these knobs, all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 get to fight the infiltrators, and then these 4 will get to fight the scouts. And that is how the pile-in move actually works. And yes, everyone is coherency. So this is 1.9 inches. These guys are within 2 inches of 2 models, and these guys are within 2 inches of 2 models over here. So that is how you will successfully complete a pile-in in order to fight units that you necessarily didn't even charge. All right, so let's go back into the PowerPoint. And I think we're going to start talking about actually fighting now, which is really, really critical for you guys to understand. So here we are. All right. This is where we are going to swing our... You know what? I actually skipped a step. So before I go further, guys, I'm going to actually show you how to use this pile-in to defeat a fights first unit. Yeah, I think that... Oh, actually, you know what? Yeah. Let's just do that right now. so that we all understand how to defeat fights first. So let's do this exact same scenario here. Exactly the same scenario. But let's say instead of these being scouts, these are, let's say these are going to be Khorne Berserkers with a Master of Executions. Right? So we're going to use our Pylon to actually defeat Khorne Berserkers with the Master of Executions. So we have these Khorne Berserkers right here in the same place as the scouts previously were. We're in a weird world where infiltrators and Khorne Berserkers are carefully managed. Now, I would never want to charge my knobs into the Khorne Berserkers because they would just fight first, and the Master of Executions would kill my entire knob squad by himself. However, in this scenario, what I did is I just charged these infiltrators, and remember, we're pretending that these guys are allied, so just bear with me. And I'm outside of our engagement range, so it's all totally legal. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do my pile-in, and since I've already started the fight phase, let's say he's here just for brevity to make sure that this is all good. Since I've already started my fight phase has started with the pile-in, guys. Now, no longer can the World Eater Master of Executions fight because I've already started my fight, because the fight begins when you pile in. So now that I've piled in, the World Eater Master of Executions can no longer activate, which means they do not get to use their fight's first ability simply because at the beginning of the fight phase, they were not within engagement range of enemy models, nor did they charge that turn, meaning that they don't get the charge bonus, which is fights first. So effectively what I did here is I was able to defeat the fights first ability just by using my pile-ins intentionally. So I have one more example I want to show you. This actually came up yesterday, and it was a really good move I was actually very proud of. So I was playing a match with my Blood Angels into the Adeptus Custodes, and this is effectively what was happening. So I had this exact scenario. Trajan Valoris was hanging out here, and he had another unit of Custodian Guard led by someone, Valerian maybe. Now, I couldn't necessarily charge Trajan Valoris, because if I did with my Death Company Marines, Trajan would just fight first and he would slaughter my Death Company. I had Lamartes as well, and so they were -1 damage, but Trajan gets to ignore those modifiers. But this was pre-new Custodes Codex, just so you guys are clear. So what I ended up doing is I actually charged my Ball Predator. Excuse me, guys. I actually charged my Ball Predator into Trajan's unit, and I tagged them like this. So now what happens is Trajan's unit does not have the ability to do a heroic intervention. And then what I did is I did not want to charge Trajan with my Death Company. So instead, I charged my Death Company into this squad, and I rolled like, I don't know, a 5 or something, so that I couldn't get through the wall. And it ended up being something like that. And then these guys, I just moved them all to be outside of engagement range of the Wardens here. And they all effectively just did this. And maybe this guy went like here or something. So now what happened is Trajan's unit has the ability to fight first, but he couldn't do anything, right? Because this Warden would have to pile in towards the Ball Predator, because the Ball Predator is closer. So he would have to do this. And then he would get to fight with maybe the 3 Wardens. I think this guy was actually standing here. So he would have only gotten to fight with, say, like 2 Wardens into my Death Company, which I didn't care about. So instead of doing that, what happened is he chose not to activate his Fights First ability. So then I fought with the Death Company. I ended up piling in my Death Company, just like this. And these guys all had to end up fighting into Valerian. I don't remember if this guy could. It doesn't matter. So effectively what happens is that these 6 guys get to fight into the Wardens before the Wardens get to fight, because they can't use their Fight First ability, because I didn't charge them. All I did was I piled into them. And by doing this, I was able to kill all the Wardens. And then, or I think 1 Warden survived. But then, I think it was this guy who survived. And then Trajan was unable to hit me back, because he's not within engagement range of me, and he's also not within an inch of a model that's within, and then he's also not base to base with a model that's base to base. So he's not in the fighting range to fight into my Death Company. If Trajan wanted to pile in, he would have to end closer to the Ball Predator, and he's already like a 0.3 inches away. So the only way he could do it is he would have to pile in this way, meaning it's impossible for Trajan to ever hit my Death Company. So I was effectively very safe, and I got to avoid his Fights First ability. So that is how pile in is exceptionally valuable, guys. So now I'll go back to the PowerPoint and we'll start finishing up through some like attacks and stuff like that. Just wanted to really, really hammer that in so that you guys can understand how powerful it is utilizing your pylons. Okay, so activation on the fighting. All right, this is a really important step of the fight phase that a lot of people don't consider. You need to prioritize your attacks, especially if you have mixed attacks. For example, let's say that I am attacking a unit of custodes who all have, 3 wounds each. And one of the models is left on 1 wound, and I'm attacking them with a unit of boys. So I've got a power claw on the knob that does damage 2, and I also have a bunch of boys that have damage 1 attacks. If one of the custodian models, they all have 3 wounds, mind you, is left on 1 wound, which attack should I start with? Should I start with the choppas that deal 1 damage, or should I start with the power claw that deals 2? Well, you really, really should start with the choppas that deal 1 damage, because you don't want to waste one of your 2 damage attacks just causing 1 wound, because attacks do not spill over in 40k. They only do that in like Age of Sigmar and other games like that. So you want to maximize the damage potential. So I would swing with my damage 1 attacks first, because I would use a 1 damage attack to deal 1 wound that I needed to get rid of the model. So then when I swing in with my 2 damage attacks, I'll maximize the impact for it. So that's really important concept to consider. Then activation of the fight phase. Now, this is also a really big part of the fight phase that a lot of people don't consider. Okay. First off, let's talk about stratagem use in the fight phase. You really, really desperately need to read stratagems, read the target, and read the timing, because it is very, very important. Typically speaking, your stratagems need to be declared. The offensive stratagems for the unit that is attacking need to be declared when that unit is selected to fight. This is not always the case, but almost always it is the case. So, for example, I have a stratagem called the Red Rampage, and it says, when fight phase, target 1 Adeptus Astartes unit from your army that has not been selected to fight. Meaning, when I declare my attacks from the unit I want to use the stratagem on, I have to use this stratagem before I actually select them to fight. And why is that important? Because people might be like, oh, well, why does that matter? Well, it matters for this reason. So what this stratagem does is it gives me +1 to wound, and it gives me lethal hits. Or it gives me lance and lethal hits. So effectively +1 to wound and lethal hits. Now, let's say that I activated my unit to attack your knobs. And then you say, okay, cool, I'm going to spend a CP to make my knobs -1 to be wounded. I do not have the option, being the Blood Angels player, to then use Red Rampage to give myself +1 to wound to counteract that. I can't do it anymore, because my unit's already been selected to fight, and I can only use this strat if my unit has not been selected to fight. So effectively, the way that you should think about it, although you should read each individual stratagem because the timing is a little bit different, and it's really important that you grasp this. So the way it needs to be done is when I allocate my attacks, I need to declare the stratagems that I'm using offensively. You, as the defender, typically will get to use stratagems defensively. So for example, here I have a defensive stratagem for the Blood Angels as well. When fight phase, just after an enemy has selected its targets. Target 1 Adeptus Astartes unit from your army that was selected as the target of 1 or more of the attacking unit's attacks. Blech. So effectively, what I get to do this is I get to do this reactively. I get to see what you're going to be hitting me with. So if you're not using offensive stratagems, maybe I don't waste my CP on this because I might not need it. Or if you are using a bunch of offensive stratagems and you think that, and I think that I'm going to die to your attacks, I can then use this to actually make myself fight on death and get a little bit of revenge. So the timing of stratagems is really, really important. So when you fight, each attack is going to be done technically individually. We fast roll for convenience, but you need to declare all of your attack profiles, say you're using a strike or a sweep, and all of your stratagems before your opponent declares their reactions. Cool. Glad we got that out of the way, because I do see some people screw that up. Now, one other thing about the fight phase, I'm going to go back to TTS to kind of demonstrate this for you guys, is when you have feel no pains, these feel no pains really need to be rolled 1 at a time, or for 1 damage at a time. So I'm going to go back to the TTS view so I can kind of show you how this really skews the math, okay? Let's go here. I'm going to click the button. just so you understand why you need to be rolling your damage rolls one at a time for Fiona Pains. Let's say I have a unit of Wardens with Trajan Valors here, okay? I have 4 Wardens. They all have 3 wounds each, and I'm hitting them. Let's say I hit them with a bunch of Death Company, and I'm going to wound them 20 times, and they're going to make 10 saves. So the Wardens made 10 saves, but in this phase, they have a 4-up Fiona Pain. So each one of these attacks causes 2 damage. They've already failed 10 of the 20 saves. So let's just go ahead and say that, boom, boom. So they failed 20 damage. So they will now suffer 20 damage, all right? Now with a 4-up Fiona Pain, you generally expect that you would save 10 of these damage points. Let's just roll to kind of show it. So let's say that it was perfectly average and they failed 10 of the Fiona Pains, which means you would lose 3 Wardens, right? Because each Warden has 3 wounds. 1, 2, 3, and then one guy would take a damage. However, this is not the correct way to do things because each attacks do not spill over. So the way you would actually have to do it, let me show you here, is if you made 10 of your saves, so meaning you suffer 20 damage and now you have to roll your Fiona Pains, you really need to be doing them 3 at a time. Because the first damage you suffered was going to be 3 damage. Because you really only failed 10 saves, right? You failed 10 saves, and each one of these saves is 2 damage. So the first one that's coming through, take your first die, you have to roll 2. So the first guy takes 2 damage. Now for the next save, you have now killed 1 Warden. Now for the next save, sorry, it's 2 damage. They take 1 damage on that save. And for the next one, they take no damage. So now you've only killed 1, and 1 has taken 1 wound. So let's say, turn that into that, and then we'll have a blue die show up, and 1 guy has taken 1 damage. Then we make another save, which is 2 damage here. Okay, so now 1 guy has suffered 2 damage. And then again. And then he has died. So even though I didn't make any of the Fiona Pains, that still only causes 1 damage because 1 guy had 1 wound left over. So now we have 2 units that have been killed, and everyone else is fresh. So then I have 2 damage for here. He passes 1. So now that 1 model has taken 1 damage. So I've lost 2 models, and 1 guy has taken 1 damage. Then he's taken 2 damage. Then he's dead because he just suffers 2. So now I've lost 3 models. And then for the last one, he suffered 1. So in this scenario, what you're actually end up seeing is that the math actually works out the same because that is the average. They should have lost about 3 and 1 models. But as you can see, what if I had rolled these in 2s? And this is actually a very cute little trick if you guys play on TTS sometimes. You can actually make those saves way, way faster because you can just do something like this. You end up taking all the 20 damage you've suffered and you click this button, roll in 2s, and it will actually roll it in 2. So here, off of the first 3 attacks, you kill 1 model. Then off of the next 3 attacks, you take for 1 damage, no damage, no damage, no damage. So off of all of these, you'll end up killing a 2nd model. And then the next guy takes 2 damage because he passes this, feel no pain, fails this one, passes, fails. So in this scenario, you would have only lost 2 models and 1 guy would have taken 2 damage. So it's a lot easier on TTS to do that. But that's why you really need to be rolling your Fiona Pains damage at a time. So just to clarify all of that for you. Now, we don't have much more to go through, but we are going to talk a little bit more just so that we can really hammer in the fight phase activation. So we'll go back to the PowerPoint here. So let's talk about the consolidation. Now, this is the last step of the fight phase, and it's a very, very important step of the fight phase. This is the end. This will end your activation. It's the last thing that you do when your unit fights. You will get to move 3 inches towards the closest enemy model, base to base if possible, and in coherency. If it's not possible to end an engagement range with an enemy model, then you may move towards the closest objective if you can end within range of it. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, what it means, I'm going to show on TTS actually, because that's just going to be easier. But let me just finish this and we'll do it all in one go. When you do a consolidation, it is on a model by model basis. Each model doesn't have to consolidate. You can choose to consolidate 3 models, but they will all have to consolidate towards the closest enemy model for each one of the models. It can be a little bit confusing. So let's go to TTS. I'm going to demonstrate this and then we'll wrap this video up and you guys will have a much greater understanding of how the fight phase works and how you can optimize it to make yourself a much higher level player. So once again, back into the breach, we have TTS here, okay? All right, let me get rid of some of these dice. And then here's what I want to do. I'm going to move all of these models. And I'm going to have some Khorne Berserkers. We're not going to have the fights first here, just so I can simply demonstrate this. If I have a unit of Khorne Berserkers and they are all standing right here, and then I charge them with my knobs. My knobs are over here, and I end up getting here and here and here and here. Say they're here and here. And then the other guys kind of stand like here. Can't stand inside the wall, so let's say they stand here. You stand here. And then you just can fight. So I'm going to kill the Khorne Berserkers. Since I have killed the Khorne Berserkers, now my unit gets to consolidate up to 3 inches towards the closest enemy model. Well, there are no enemy models. So I get to go to the second clause, which means I can consolidate 3 inches towards the closest enemy objective, to the closest objective. The problem is I can't actually end within engagement range of this objective, which means I don't get to consolidate at all. 0 opportunity to consolidate. Now, if I had been a smarter boy about this, what I could have done when I made my charge, I could do my pile-ins. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pile in my knob to be here. And I'm going to pile in this knob. He's going to go 2.5 and then 0.5 this way. So then when I kill the models, let's just say I ended my charge like this instead, just so I can demonstrate better for you guys. We're just going to say that this is how I ended my charge so I can demonstrate more appropriately for you. So now what I can do is I get to pile in my model, and he's going to go his 3 inches right there. So now when I kill all of the Berserkers, I will be able to consolidate my unit because I can end on the closest objective. That is the way it works. And then every single model will get to do the same, because the unit gets to move towards the closest objective since there are no enemy units within that you can end within engagement range of. And that is how the consolidate works. And so you guys can see that the difference here is between me scoring primary and not scoring primary. That is the difference between knowing and not knowing how to use your combat movement. So I highly recommend everyone probably watches this video maybe one more time. If you like this content, definitely leave a like and a subscription and send it to your friends, because people need to know how to do combat movement. It is critical. You need to know how to do your pile-ins so that you can get an engagement range of models that you don't want to charge. You need to know how to defeat fights first. You need to know how to actually position yourself so that you can get on these really objectives and all these things like this. So this has been a huge tutorial on the fight phase. This is going to serve you very well. And until next time, my happy crumpers, I'm out. Have a great day. Bye-bye.